episode 3 of Through the Web podcast. We've made it to the third one.
Wow, yeah.
Third in a week. I'm your host, Tawsif, and I have...
ColdFusion, Dagogo, yeah.
ColdFusion, you go in ColdFusion now.
Yes.
Do you ever plan to make it your official middle name at some point in the future?
Not at this point, no.
But you are considering...
You just said that. So, no, I'm not considering that, unfortunately.
I'm just putting words in Dagogo's mouth. But, you know, I got to admit, I do feel very, very insecure doing this podcast because your voice is just on a different level, so much so that, you know, BMW is getting on.
Yeah, that's true.
As you've announced last episode. But it's good to see, you know, the crowd also keeping up with the podcast. We've hit almost 800 subscribers at the time of this recording, almost double from last week. Speaking of, you know, subscribers and comments, which one has been your favorite from last episode?
I'd like to say Manoj Sundar. He says, great content, loving him, been a big fan of ColdFusion. So thanks for that.
Cool. And my one's actually from EEQ. I think it's a friend, Rashik is his name. And he said, you know, he came for the economic impact of the sanctions and left with Russian cats being banned. So this is a good episode. And he had made some suggestions as well as to, you know, if we could share a piece of content that both of us enjoyed over the last week. Since we're creators, he would like to see what kind of content we consume and how we look at things. So did you watch anything interesting this week on YouTube or anywhere else that you...
That's a good question. I did. Let me just try and recall. Okay, I did watch a video. This is kind of like a bit left field of what you would expect, but on the design, I guess, trend of like those flat designs of like people with disproportionate bodies and they're kind of flowy and elastic. It's kind of like the corporate like design art style. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like Google has it, Facebook has it. Like it's that. They're drawings of people, but they're like all like flowy and they're like,
it's that. It's almost default.
Yeah.
By now, it's
quite
where
standard.
It's quite standard where they have certain kind of you know those I know what you mean, like curves, and it's got circles and shapes in the back, and they've got a certain color palette as well. So a video about that.
Yes. Cool. So kind of the history of how it started and just what it really means in the cultural context and how, you know, the art style on its own isn't necessarily bad, but it's been corporatized so much and it's by the biggest and sometimes the least trusted corporations. So it's kind of a way to just say, trust us. You know, it's all friendly and everything, but behind the scenes, you know, it's not. Yeah,
it's funny thing is because it's been adapted so much by big corporations, now it's almost a symbol of big corporations, and henceforth, I think going forward, people will be like, nope, whenever you use something too organic, you can't trust it.
Yeah, so it was interesting because that art style, it had been around since the 1920s, but kind of, you know, faded away, but then came back in 2017 when there was a company that was contracted to make it for Facebook. And they gave it a name, I can't remember what it was, but that was the next resurgence. And that's what everyone's using. They all copied Facebook, actually, which was interesting. So, yeah, that was something I watched and found.
Do you know who was it by, like the video? Who was it by?
Okay, so I've only seen 2 videos from this channel ever. He has like a hourglass as his thumbnail. I can't recall.
That's fine. We'll look it up and then we'll put it up. As for me, do you know Ray Dalio?
Yes, I saw that too. I saw that.
Such a great video.
Amazing.
Yeah,
really
it's
good.
I forgot the title of it, but it's about the
Rise and Fall of Empires.
Rise and Fall of Empires, basically, and how to deal with changing times. It's actually based on a book which I haven't started reading. I read his other book called Principles. I think. So for those who don't know, Ray Dalio is a hedge fund manager. Is very successful entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur at the stage, and he writes quite interesting stuff like that. And one of his latest books got turned into almost a 45-minute long distilled animated video, the animations of which were fantastic as well. Very, very good video about how empires and how world orders become or come into being, essentially, and how we are probably in the middle of a shifting world order as he's trying to suggest. Very, very good video that I'd recommend anyone watch. I think very relevant for our crowd as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just touching on that again, something very interesting about that is like, since the 1500s, we can see the same, well, in his video, he showed that since the 1500s, the same pattern has been repeating. So it seems like obviously we have a lot of technology now. People think we're so different. We're so much smarter than all those people back then, but we do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. It's like we don't learn.
Yeah. But then again, it's kind of like, once one generation dies, the next one forgets. So it's kind of like it's bound to happen kind of thing.
This is, do you know Van Neistat?
I've heard of him.
So it's Casey Neistat's brother.
Okay, yeah.
He's actually one of the OG, designers and YouTubers as well. Even before, they both started together anyway. But he made this similar video as well about cycles, and it was based on another book. And again, forgive me because I can't remember the names, but it was very similar of how there are like certain, like he drew a quadrant and how humans go through these phases, and we're in that one phase apparently where everything's kind of very highly emotional, very polarized, and something could happen. It could be a war, it could be certain events that might doesn't have to be bloody, but certain events that change the whole thing, and it was very similar.
Yeah, and then there's a rebirth, and then
exactly, and it's been like that for centuries now.
There was another book that kind of focused on America, talking about the same kind of thing as well. So I think it's a common trait just to see these cycles in humans, and it's quite interesting, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think we just don't learn. I think that's the bottom line.
But we're here to change that.
I know. That's why you listen to the podcast and you learn.
Yeah. Okay, so
how's your week?
My week. My week has been good. Mainly just still working on some more videos. Got some exciting ones to come up. The next video is going to be on spinal implants that are making people who are completely paralyzed to be able to walk, swim, and cycle again. So that's going to be an interesting one coming up. How about yourself?
No, nothing much this week. Pretty standard. Not making a video about spinal implants, I can tell you that. But yeah, I just want to learn more about it. So you mentioned people who can't.
Yeah, so they're paralyzed before.
Right.
And so what happened was initially this technology had been used for a few years previously, but it was mainly for pain relief. So like in people that were obviously fully able-bodied. Yeah. And then the scientists realized that some of these techniques could actually be repurposed. So what they've done is they've actually put 16 spinal implants directly on the spine, and they interface with the brain through an algorithm that mimics how the muscles would move right now. But so at this time, if you watch the people that are able to walk and everything, the movements are quite jerky and non-natural. But in the future, this was kind of just like a proof of concept for 3 people, and it works. But they want to increase the number of implants from 16 to 32. And then you can kind of see that, you'll get finer and finer movement and like more resolution essentially in the way the muscles can actually move. So yeah, it's very, very interesting stuff, I think.
So are they still kind of, at very early stages from the sounds of it? But it sounds like it could literally be like one of the biggest, technological advancements, like, making paralyzed people move again is crazy. Yeah.
So this is right at the beginning. It's like the Model T car kind of thing at the moment. Yeah. It's got a long way to go, but so far it's quite promising. So I think there was 3 patients aged 29 to 40 something, and all 3 of them showed like that they could start moving after 1 day of the implant. So
right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So that's the next video coming up, hopefully. By the time people watch this, hopefully it'll be up.
Yeah, I should say.
On that note, like, there's other things that have happened on similar kind of way of implants and transplants as well. Like a couple of months ago, an individual had a heart transplant from a pig. And it was considered, like a big step in science and trying to understand it. Unfortunately, he passed away this week from what I've seen. And but obviously he knew the risks, and everybody knew the risk that this was an experiment of that sort. I don't know, have you seen this in the news at all?
Yeah, I have. And it wasn't so much that he knew the risks. It was like he was almost the perfect candidate because his heart was so bad. It was like I think it was a degenerative disease. So basically, his heart was in such poor shape he didn't qualify for a regular heart transplant.
Right.
So the doctors were kind of like, all right, we'll try this. And I saw a statement from the family saying that like they were just grateful that they got to spend this extra time with him and everything. And they said, you know, thank you to the doctors. This was amazing. So I think, the doctors were actually happy that it worked at all. So like, you know, a week afterwards, they were like, wow, we weren't expecting this. Yeah. So the fact that the heart kept on going and that they're saying that this is just so early, like there's so many parameters that they could tweak because it was CRISPR technology. So they modified. So I think there's a type of sugar that the pigs have and some other animals have that we don't. So our body sees that and goes crazy and rejects it. So they turned those genes off in the pigs that they raised and then also did some other altering to the host. And then it managed to work for a while, but it seems like they can keep on tweaking until they can get this to last longer. And, you know, that's incredible.
It is. The fact that, you know, he survived 2 months in this you know, way is incredible. But, you know, that poses a lot of, I guess, ethical questions down the line. Like, say it works and we've finally, you know, found a way to do this. That obviously creates a market for breeding pigs in a certain way, only for them to be killed and use their heart for humans down the line, right?
There's an interesting way of thinking about that. Like, if you eat bacon, like it's the same thing, I guess, in a way, because the purpose of those pigs is to be killed to eat. You know, whether that's right or wrong depends on what you think. But I think right now the stat is currently there's about 100,000 people waiting for organ transplants in the United States alone. And, you know, that's a lot of people that's going to die just waiting. So I think if we can have something like this, it is an ethical question, but it may resolve a lot of those people who are in this dilemma of just like waiting to get a transplant. And if it can be done in such a way where, it works out, I kind of tend to lean that that's a good thing. Like, you know, if we're saving lives, instead of them being used to eat for bacon on a McDonald's, it's saving a life. So it's kind of like, you know, so that's the way I see it. What about you?
I would side with you on this as well. I think it's it is a bit of a, you know, it does take you to an existential kind of route that, okay, you know, like, are humans here only to look after themselves and destroy everything that's around them, you know, build things to destroy everything around them eventually. And, you know, there's the whole idea that, you know, when is it enough? Like, why can't that person just pass away because it's the natural way out kind of thing? But the same thing could be said about anything, right? Like, you know, I wear glasses because I can't see, and I could have just said that, oh, it's a natural way, I can't see, let me be blind forever. Like, that doesn't make sense. You know, so I guess that argument doesn't stand. But at the same time, I do understand that, you know, like humans have been around for a while because we've, you know, taken things in our control and want to hold on to that control forever. Like the fact that we are exploring other parts of the solar system only to extract off its resources or maybe colonize it at some point, you know, can be looked at two different ways, right? One could be like, you know, we're explorers by nature. We want to go as far as we can. I think that's human nature. Or it's like, you know, we are destructive and all we want to do is just take and never give back.
But then again, on the other side, like if we remove ourselves from our position now and put ourselves inside the body of someone who like needs a kidney transplant because they're going to die and they're waiting on the list, for us to say, just let them die, that's the natural process, I don't think they'll be agreeing with that, you know? So I think it really, it's a hard one. And I think that it has to be looked at in a lot of different ways. And
I mean, it depends. Why do they need the kidney, right? If they've used it for getting the latest Mac Studio, which we'll talk about in a second, you know, that's fine. That's fine, right? We need to give him a kidney for sure, because it's a worthwhile cause.
Look, if someone sells their kidney for an Apple product, well, okay, maybe that the natural order should come into.
I mean, have you even looked at the studio, man? It's
okay. Let's go there. Let's go there.
Should we just go there?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Let's do the Apple.
So I did look at the Apple presentation of the Mac Studio and some of the other products that they released, and you know, a lot of people are still Apple haters out there. But as I said in my M1 video, like when they released this chip and they were going down this path of Apple Silicon, I could see like it was a no-brainer to me that this was a huge move, a new direction. And we're starting to see the fruits of that now because like they said they could just like pretty much put two M1 Max chips together and make this M1 Ultra chip that's like, you know, twice as powerful and like now is challenging like the top GPU, like standalone GPUs. And it's like, what's the limit? You could just put like 6 of them together and then like, and it's like, then you're starting to see, it's like, wow, this is different. And that's kind of what I was talking about in the video. Like,
and did you get a lot of hate for that back then? Like,
some people understood, but a lot of people didn't. It's the internet. So
because that video did really well. I remember.
Yeah.
You know,
I think 3 point something million now.
Because it was just out. People were just sharing it a lot. And I think, it was also because it was such a revolutionary, you know, product, even for Apple's ecosystem, right? So
yeah, and I think a lot of people just see the logo Apple and it's like, oh, expensive crap, and then that's it, move on. But I think you got to give them credit where credit is due. Like they've really stepped out there, and obviously they've got the cash to do it, but they've really put that in and focused in on like good silicon, which is it's going to be a game changer. So what did you think?
No. So again, like I'm not a Apple user. You know, as we tried speaking about it last week, but I, even though I was a bit of an Apple hater at the start, you know, I was just too young and didn't understand the internet and just wanted to stand out on the internet 10, 15 years ago. So I just had to hate Apple. But, you know, as I grew older, it's the appreciation of the tech, right? I think the limits, you know, the not the limits, but I guess the ceilings, it's broken over the years. And I also said last week is, you know, that we have a podcast because, you know, they've revolutionized audio in a lot of ways with the iPod and so forth. So, you know, they have changed the game in a lot of ways, but the criticism has always been around the expensive price point. I think the maxed out version of the Mac Studio is what, like $8,000 US dollars, which, you know, is incredible. But then again, you know, only someone who has that amount of, you know, money or someone who was creative enough to run on that, you know, or has built an ecosystem where they need that would be the only ones spending. And even prior to the whole event, like, you know, Apple was teasing the idea of performance, right? I think the whole idea that the word performance was around, which, you know, leaned more towards something that's more desktop, more settled, more high rig rather than mobile. And that's what they delivered. It is, I think, some of the specs that I've seen on the studios is, man, it's incredible. Yeah,
but that's the crazy thing is this isn't the end point. They've still got the Pro to go. Like,
exactly.
So this is like the mid-range product, and you know you're starting to see this is something else. So basically what was it? The cheese grater Mac that was on the desktop one that was like 50 grand.
It's hilarious that we're like, oh, is this cheese grater one? Is it a trash can? Or is it's like
such bad
it's the internet. So far, this one I haven't seen as much hate because it doesn't look anything extra. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. So the cheese grater one, I think it was like 40, 50 grand, like that, the maxed out one that you could get. And this outperforms it like by a long shot. And it's just this little box. And it's like, you know, it's more energy efficient and like just, but the thing about it though is like you have to take it with a caveat. Like obviously this performance is insane, but then you kind of look at the compatibility issues. So like you got games, like for example, like they're not no Mac user is like a real gamer. So everything has to go through like the Rosetta, as in the translation software on the fly. Even though it's okay, pretty good, you're still not going to get all of the juice from it that you would otherwise with just say a Windows machine. But still, you know, like when it comes to the next time round, there's like 6 chips stacked together. You can just use brute force just to outperform.
Oh man, like rendering on that, like, you know, Brayden, do you render stuff? Like, have you seen the Mac specs?
Yeah, it's crazy.
You can just speak into the mic.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. Like that chip is scary. Like I keep up with that stuff like pretty heavily, and looking at what Intel and AMD are doing now, I bet you they're just sitting there like crapping themselves. Like, what do you do? Like, you know, this guy's just released a chipset twice the size of anything else.
Like, imagine
20
rendering
cores. You know what I mean? It's a consumer product. It's not a Threadripper. You know what I mean?
Like imagine rendering on that. Like all the 4K footage and 8K.
They were saying that you could do like 16 streams of 8K at the same time or something stupid like that. It's man.
It is stupid. No, it's like going forward, it does look like they're focusing on the creatives and on the, you know, the, I guess, to build stuff, right? I think that's always been Apple's angle, is that, okay, we're going to make the average consumer be able to build something that's, you know, incredibly powerful down the line. Yeah, it doesn't pick up as much, so it's good.
Yeah. I agree with that. They've always been like kind of creatives first, and this is really just the next evolution in that. And I think people have to realize that like this may be the beginning of a new era. And I also saw something about a new alliance that had been formed between some of the biggest chip makers, so Intel, Qualcomm, AMD, someone else. Basically, it's kind of like a standard where they can do the same thing that Apple did, essentially like be able to make their chips talk to each other on a standardized platform. So I think people like, not people, but the other companies, the traditional chip manufacturers are looking at this and saying, hey, we've got to move, we've got to do something. So it's a win for us all, I think.
I mean, having said that, what do you think of the biggest criticism of Apple, is still the additional things that you need to run at such a high price point, like like dongles are expensive, and or just the idea of just squeezing money out from the regular consumer. That's something they haven't been able to defend. So what's your thought?
I kind of agree with that. I think some of these things are purposely done, so like designing and omitting things just to make the consumer spend a bit more. I think that's definitely something Apple's guilty of. So their main brand selling point is that their consumer items are so good that you're going to put up with this. And most people might scoff and laugh, but it's worked. People are still buying their products, even though they have to have ridiculous things like so many. Well, not so much on the new MacBook Pro, but like for a while there's so many dongles and this ridiculous stuff. And it's like what's going on here? Like so.
Even like the wheels that costed like a fortune or something.
And they've done it again. The new stand is still like $1,000 or whatever for like a piece of metal.
It feels one thing that Apple has always positioned themselves as beyond being for the creative or the creator is that it is a luxury product, right? I think they want to be known as the Gucci or the Louis Vuitton of the.
That's why their phones are never on sale. But yeah,
sorry.
That's why their phones are never on sale. Yeah, they never slash the price. Yeah,
exactly. So I think that's the whole angle that like we are the one to have if you want to flaunt, right? And I think having those additional items at those ridiculous prices become that. That flex that, okay, I've got a stand that's worth X amount of money and you don't, and I have that because I can, kind of thing, right? And it serves no other purpose. I mean, holding up the monitor is its secondary purpose. That's how to look at it. Moving the big case on wheels is the secondary purpose. The primary purpose is to flaunt. So I get where they're coming from, and I understand the thing. But the memes help, man. Like the memes, I think, actually help the product get more recognition, more eyes, and ultimately it helps strengthen the Apple supporters because they feel again validated. It becomes it actually works, in their favor. So it is it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
On a more serious note, this week, even though we didn't really plan on doing a weekly Russia-Ukraine update, but things do seem to be happening, obviously on the ground, but also from tech side of things. So one of the biggest, I guess, highlights from that update is that Netflix has decided to cancel all subscriptions in Russia, and from what I've last seen, I think they have over 1 million subscribers in the country. And I found this very interesting because with a lot of the sanctions, or even in the past before the war, where big companies take a certain stance, it's more so how it affects their bottom line kind of thing, and how it affects their projections of revenue down the years. And with all the I don't want to say pandering, but with all the movement that they might side, or all the causes that they might support, even though it's good in the net positive that they're doing it and it's impacting people positively, but it's also because it's impacting their profit margin. So 1 million subscribers gone, it seems like it is not just a way to simply virtue signal, because it is going to hit them hard on their profits down the line. So I find that quite interesting because like it seems like it is a point where it's super serious even for these private companies to be taking such a hard stance. Like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I guess for me, like, I'm actually having trouble understanding what the goal of the sanctions is for things like this, for like companies like Netflix or, you know, whatever it is, to pull out from Russia in terms of like not supporting the Russian people or like, you know, being in that sphere, because, you know, the Russian people didn't ask for this. So I don't know if it's like more pressure to get them to revolt against Putin because everyone's just pulling out. I don't know if that's the angle, but that's what makes the most sense to me. But yeah, I think it is interesting how they're doing this, because 11 million subscribers, you say?
I think over a million.
Sorry, 1 million subscribers, and you got, I don't know what, $15 a month
15.
kind of thing. Yeah, $15 million a month gone from Netflix. So that's a lot of money. So yeah, they must really, you know, stand by this, and maybe it is a bit of a brand image thing. Like, people will look at this and be like, okay, so Netflix is you know,
supporting worthwhile causes.
Yeah, so that it could work out well for them. But yeah, I think, I don't know, like, I'm on two sides. Like, what is it really doing? Is this, you know, really going to stop the war? Like,
just two comments there. Like, one thing was the Russian people aren't supporting. One news that I actually saw is that there is, and again, I have to verify the source of the study, but I think just over 50% of that study are in support of the war. So again, you know, obviously sample sizes, demographics, all this kind of stuff does come into play.
Yeah.
Maybe we're seeing that 40-something% protests, you know, being broadcast a bit more than usual. But yeah, it would be interesting to actually find out like what the numbers are.
Because Russia's, I remember watching a video before this war, like a year ago, just about how varied and huge Russia is. Like, you know, some areas of Russia just almost seem like Chinese, and then some areas seem like, you know, Middle Eastern, and it's like, it's a huge country. So it's like
incredible.
I don't know, like, were these surveys done in Moscow or like, you know?
I mean, we see the polarization in the US because US in itself is also a big country, right? And different states actually have very different characters and you know, like political affiliations and everything. So imagine Russia, where, as you mentioned, it's some of the segments are so far off from what we consider quote unquote Russia. It is a difficult one to see that how.
In this video, I think they were mentioning how there's like, you know, I can't remember the number, but something on the order of like 10 different like states that are almost completely different countries, but all within, you know, Russia. And it's like, you look at the people and you see the geographics, and it's just like completely different. It's amazing. But yeah, I can see how it will be hard to kind of figure out what everyone really feels like.
Yeah, because 2018 World Cup was in Russia, the football World Cup, and I was planning to go, and I was looking at, like, you know, the different cities that the games were being played, and I was looking at 3 cities, and I thought it was going to be like, you know, a simple, you know, like a bus ride or something. Man, it was like, you know, a few hours of flights here and there and completely different weathers. And it was incredible, you know, to see how these big cities and big places existed, right? And speaking about football, I don't know if you follow soccer, but so basically Chelsea, which is one of the biggest Premier League clubs in the world, their owner is Roman Abramovich. He is a Russian oligarch.
Oligarch.
Yeah, I said it right. The government of the UK have started imposing sanctions. So what they've done against these oligarchs is that they're freezing the assets. So now, basically, because he owns majority of the football club, basically it's impacting the football club and its fans. So what they're doing now is Chelsea no longer, and it's just as late as, you know, the news came out last night, is that but they can't sell any more new tickets. Only season ticket holders can go and watch. No new tickets until further notice. No selling of merchandise. No new player signings. No contract extensions. Like, all of that is being impacted, and you know, people are obviously a bit upset because Chelsea fans are like, "What did I do to deserve this?" Like, I understand freezing assets and taking a stance against the owner, but it's literally impacting the club to a point where it could potentially even go down to administration at some point. And they're like one of the more successful clubs in the recent years. And their sponsor is also taking out, like, they have a shirt sponsor that said you can't put our logo until further notice. And you're thinking, like as you mentioned, like how is that
stopping the war.
stopping the war in some ways? So it is getting quite interesting with Netflix, and now even the government's taking this stance where it's impacting people who are not even connected to Russia at all.
Okay, I'm going to say something.
Do it.
So we may have to cut this out. We'll see how it goes.
More work for Brayden.
But I feel that it's a trend that's been going on in terms of like there's something called power distance, where it's like you have the people on top and then the people at the bottom, and just how much are they willing to tolerate. It seems like in the past 2 years with COVID and everything, we were tolerating a lot, and it seems like when it comes to authority, all forms of authority have become increasingly authoritarian, it seems like. So it's like they can seem to have the freedom to do whatever they want. Like when it's like, I don't know, it doesn't really make logical sense, but it's just happening so much, I think. So yeah, like the Chelsea fans getting owned because something they had nothing to do with. It's why? Like, I don't know. That's just my thought.
Yeah. I mean, we would dive deeper onto the comment you just made, but I understand what you're saying. I think I don't know if it's just hunger for power, again, that human trait we spoke about, and some people do that, but it is also you also gotta look at the data, and sometimes like in this case I don't see how it's gonna help in any way, but in other cases there might be some logical reasoning and things of that sort. Brayden, do you follow, like, have you been following any of the sport news with
Well, yeah, I keep up a lot with Formula One, and I don't know if any of our viewers also do, but Haas F1 team is owned by an American billionaire, Gene Haas, and they were in partnership with a Russian company for a long time that became their major sponsor for the past 2 years. And the son of the owner of that company became one of the drivers, and it's been kind of controversial for the past 2 years, but then going into the war now, that company has been removed from the team entirely. They're in pre-season testing, about to go in. They've been the sponsor entirely.
Wow.
Because the UK have also put sanctions on Russian sportsmen. He's been dropped from the team as well. And it's all super abrupt, and there's a lot of controversy around, like, can you just get rid of a guy because he just so happens to be associated with a company in Russia? Like, it's and even like I was looking up this stat of Russian owned restaurants like going down by like 60% in bookings and reservations, especially in anything that France is they're Russian. Like in New York, one specific restaurant which is owned by Russian-Ukrainian couple. Their thing went down by like 80% or 60 to 80% of reservations and nothing. And now they're having to put up like they're doing a fundraiser for Ukraine and Ukrainian people, only to like they have to like go the extra mile to kind of say that, no, I'm not associated with this. And, in some ways, being a brown skinned guy with, coming from after the 9/11 kind of stuff, I can kind of relate to that kind of thing. Like, when moving, or just simply traveling, you kind of have to do this extra like overcorrection of that. Hey, look, I'm just a regular brown guy. Like you can do random searches and stuff, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is that. Like I can kind of empathize with them in a lot of ways. A lot of regular people that have nothing to do with nothing are getting impacted and are having to kind of take this stance, even though they don't need to, because they have some root.
And I think that's the sad thing. Like, I guess the Russian people and the people who are like just happen to be like ethnically Russian or from there and like happy to advertise that they're Russian. Like now they have all like, because there's such a movement like anti-Russia and not just Putin or his like oligarchs or whatever, but Russia, the people, like you're having the general public just kind of turn against them. And I don't like it. Like, like obviously the war's bad and no one supports Putin, but it's like this extra side, this icky side that's tacked onto it. I'm not a fan.
I don't know if it's avoidable either, because, with other wars as well, we've seen in the past, or even currently, the ongoing Israel-Palestine war, and also with a lot of the African nations, it's like these things seem to be just happening, the people are the ones who have always paid the price, right? And the ones in control are always the ones in control. So
yeah.
But on the note of the whole Russia-Ukraine, there's another update on the tech side of things. Is the famous hacker group, or I guess hacktivist would be a proper
Hacktivists, yeah.
Activists, Anonymous. They have claimed that they've taken down a few Russian channels, including RT and then a few other big stations as well. And I say, they've claimed because there have been a lot of counter arguments saying that no, they haven't, and people from Russia saying that no, my channel's still working and stuff like that. My point of bringing this is less about the technicalities that did they or did they not, but it's more about how we're in kind of this, technically info war or information war, is essentially where it is the war of or one of the wars that's being fought right now is where we get the information from and who do we trust and who we don't trust.
There's an author, Douglas Murray, who writes about a lot of stuff and in terms of anthropology and whatnot, and just society in general. But he'd made an interesting point in an interview I was watching, and it was kind of for the first time, we can't actually figure out what's happened, collectively as a society. We just can't. There's almost some confusion in what's actually happened, the events. We for the first time, it's actually become really hard. So I think it is a growing trend, and it's because everyone's so fragmented and they're getting the information from different places. And then you also have this distrust of, whether it's people getting information from the mainstream media. There's another side that says, that's not true. And then even with this whole Russia-Ukraine thing, when it was first coming out from the media that Russia was preparing to attack, a lot of people were like, no, they're not. It's just the media hyping something up again. And then the intelligence was good, but people didn't listen because the distrust was sown already. So it's kind of we have this fragmented way of gathering information, and there's no unified way of saying collectively, this happened. Did you watch the news last night? This is exactly what happened. It used to be like that 30 years ago, but now it's all, we don't know.
The biggest problem is even when it's corrected, the corrected version always will get less legs than the non-corrected version.
Yeah.
So even if something sensational is out there, and the example that you used, that there was intelligence and there were reports about Russia were planning to attack a few months back, even right. I think late last year there were news of they were just creeping in, and imagine that news going out in certain media portals. And then you'd obviously have reactionary commentators, could be big names, political names, who might just say, oh, no, there's no way that's going to happen, or just sending out tweets, right? And eventually say, does happen. They'll never go back and correct their statements. People will simply forget about it down the line, and they'll keep repeating that cycle because there's no one who's keeping a score of, you were right 10 times and you were wrong 14 times kind of thing, right?
Yeah, accountability, yeah.
Exactly. And obviously people are going to say, there's cancel culture and all this stuff, but that only doesn't, I don't think that works in this scheme of...
It's not as directed and as precise as it should be, cancel culture.
And plus cancel culture, in my opinion, doesn't really exist, and that's a separate topic.
Ooh, okay. All right.
I don't know if we should do it. We should do a verdict episode on cancel culture today. That would be good. But just on that note of trying to stop someone from saying something, especially on these terms, I don't think it's helped in any way. And overall, because there's an accountability of someone saying the wrong thing, people again just kind of go away and not. It just becomes a cycle of people just not trusting the media, and I'm not saying they should trust the media, but specifically, but they have to kind of understand that there's no one source of information these days, right? It's something I think we spoke about earlier as well. It's that you have to look at 10 different sources today. You can't just look at one and be like, yep, this is where I'm getting all my news from. So
yeah, I think it's just something called the splinter net. I think that's the term for it, where everything is becoming fragmented because of the internet and the way the web just evolves.
Have you covered any news about cyber attacks in the past on your channel?
Not so much news, but I just did do a video about how governments hack each other and essentially just some of the biggest hacks that have happened. But yeah, not so much news. So this is interesting in terms of anonymous hacking RT and all of that, because Anonymous isn't really like that much of an organized group, so it could be a lot of different.
Yeah, because I've heard that anybody can join Anonymous. Apparently, it's not run by anyone in particular. It's just you can just.
It's kind of an idea, but people can join.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen Mr. Robot by any chance?
I've watched most of the first season, but I kind of fell off.
Right.
So yeah,
I ended up seeing the whole thing. And it's very good in the sense of it's got a very artistic look at a lot of current events, and they I guess focus a lot on the anonymous kind of side of things and what happens if they the cyber hacks become a big thing. So yeah, if anyone's interested in watching something related to these topics, that's a good artistic outlet, I'd say. Diving into some other topics that are kind of related with Elon Musk tweeting about power stations and nuclear power stations around the world. So he's done a few tweets. So one of them was about I'll just read it out. He says, hopefully it's now extremely obvious that Europe should restart dormant nuclear power stations and increase power output of existing ones. This is critical to national and international security. For those who mistakenly think this is a radiation risk, pick what you think is the worst location. I'll travel there and eat locally grown food on TV. I did this in Japan many years ago, shortly after Fukushima. Radiation risk is much, much lower than most people believe. So I think this is almost like a response to the idea that, big nations like Russia have nuclear power in their control, and Europe's kind of trying to dissipate a lot of the thing, because ultimately people are scared of that one bad mistake and the entire world is doomed. But his stance is more on the idea that you need to have that as a way of not only for self-defense, but also because lots of people think nuclear power is literally the best way forward for energy down the line. So I don't know. Have you had any thoughts about it?
I haven't looked into nuclear power too much, except for the fact that a lot of people have this kind of outdated view where they think the next Chernobyl or Fukushima is just down the line, but I guess with the newer technologies that are coming online in terms of nuclear power, we could potentially do it safer than what currently exists. I don't know if you've heard of thorium reactors.
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's kind of like thorium is an element kind of similar to uranium, but it can't be used for weapons, one. And two, it has a property where instead of it's self-cooling, like the core can cool itself. So the risks of some catastrophic event happening is much lower with that. But the problem is it's been theorized for 40 or 50 years, but because you can't make weapons from it, not that many people are interested in completing the research for it. But that I think, in terms of pure efficiency and energy in, energy out, I think nuclear blows everything away by far, because it's just...
Unintended?
No, man. I totally didn't think about that. Where do I start now? Because it's so efficient. So I think it should be have another look. People should have another look at it seriously. So Elon Musk, I think it's not totally crazy what you're saying.
I mean, he does say a lot of crazy things. I mean, he made me lose a few $100,000 on Dogecoin. No, he didn't. But he also said recently that I'll just read it out. I hate to say it, but we need to increase oil and gas output immediately. Extraordinary times demand extraordinary measures. Obviously, this would have a negative impact or effect on Tesla, but sustainable energy solutions simply cannot react instantaneously to make up for Russian oil and gas exports.
Yeah, I think what it's talking about here is a very short-term, near-term view. Yeah. He's not saying forever humanity should increase. I think it's just, we have a supply shock, so we fill that in. I think that's kind of what it's saying.
Yeah, but I think, as with Twitter and as with his threads, they go both ways, and people start reacting immediately. And the whole idea of letting go of oil and gas, obviously he's not with, he's not the Exxon CEO or, BPC or anything of that sort. He's literally the guy who wouldn't benefit from saying something like this. So it's cool to see that, he's taking a stance that's, again, relevant to the situation, even though it'll impact him negatively. But again, it's almost like he's going directly against the idea of because of a certain superpower, having the ego coming in that, this one superpower is taking over, we can't step back, rather than for a solution that's like, okay, this is better for the world down the line kind of thing. So I don't know what's gonna, how he's gonna do that. Like all of a sudden just start, because it's a long process. I've worked with companies in the oil and gas side of things. It's not a one.
Are you saying
how do you increase oil and gas output immediately, right? I think it's even on a short-term thing. It'll take years to...
Well, you can talk to OPEC, because I'm pretty sure that they're not producing as much oil as they should be because it benefits them. So, basically if they wanted to, they could increase output, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, in terms of doing it domestically in the United States, or for one particular company that doesn't have, the oil field right there, you're going to have to go out, do exploration, and then kind of do all the geological testing and surveys, and then start drilling and all of that. So that takes a long time. But I think members of OPEC, if they wanted, they could increase oil output. So
okay. And finally, just going through some of the top news of the week, as we do from various different sources. One of the interesting news is that Tinder will now have background checks available on people that you swipe right, left. I haven't used Tinder, so I don't know.
I can't remember either.
Is it left or right?
I think it's right.
Oh wow, we are really bad with our dating app game.
Okay, well, I actually think it's a good idea. I think it's people may say, invasion of privacy or whatever, but the thing is, if this is all public record and it's something that you'd want to know, and it's for, you hear so many horror stories from the woman's perspective of what happened online with Tinder, and it would just give them a peace of mind saying, okay, so he's not a killer, he hasn't been implicated in anything dodgy. I ultimately think that, it's actually...
But then, ex-convicts already have such a hard life getting back into the society, right?
That's the point.
With employers and with just day-to-day idea of something that's, bit of a, not bit, but it's quite taboo with how they're treated in a lot of ways, right? So I don't know how that'll help in any case.
Yeah,
it's
for them
literally going to...
It's not, I'm thinking it from
the
female perspective.
100%. I understand your point of view. I wouldn't want to, as I mentioned, to go out with someone who's been a murderer or something of that sort. But at the same time, the whole idea of justice is that they've served their time, they've paid their dues, and now they're back into the society to be able to function as a normal human being. But this will cause a stigma, and ultimately, I think it just really puts them on a different level.
I didn't consider that. So that's a good point. But also, you remember that viral picture of the hot criminal, the one with the teardrop? How he?
And he became a model afterwards.
Yeah. So maybe he can be like that, and then people will dig it.
True. This has got the bad boy vibes, and and that's true, because a lot of the, I guess, but it goes to this whole weird psychopathic, sociopathic part where people actually glamorize a lot of especially I think on TikTok and other places that I've seen.
Weird.
It is weird, where a lot of teenagers kind of go like, oh, that criminal is very, very attractive, and they'll do anything to get their attention, right? Which I understand teenage hormones, but it takes a whole different shape. And I think you're right in that way, that maybe even that adds to the...
Marilyn Manson, Ted Bundy, he got letters in jail.
Exactly.
But I guess ultimately, you can look at it both ways. I think from the female's perspective, it's good, but if you are kind of convicted, then it's not so great for you.
Yeah,
I think that's where we should pretty much wrap it up today. So, thanks so much, guys, for watching and listening, and we'll see you again for the next episode of Through the Web.